Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for the new screensavers is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. The new Screensavers is brought to you by PillPack, a full-service online pharmacy that combines modern technology, convenient packaging, and personalized service to make your life easier. Visit pillpack.com/twit and save $20 on vitamins and OTCs when you transfer your prescriptions. And by Audible.com. To download the free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/NSS.
Installing Chrome OS on a Mac, the Ultimate SSD Guide Part 2, Leo's new Linux laptop, and more. Live from the Twit Brick House in beautiful downtown Petaluma, it's the new Screensavers!
Time for the new Screensavers. Hey, Jason Snell.
Hey, Leo Laporte.
So nice to have you back.
Great
Thanks
to
for
be
coming
here.
up the road a piece.
Absolutely.
This is episode 56 for Saturday, June 4th. Can you believe it's June?
Well, the weather we've had the last couple of days, I do believe it.
Summertime is coming.
Some warmth.
And we have a very fun show for you. In fact, because of Jason, of course, is the editor-in-chief of sixcolors.com and is a longtime Mac expert. We're gonna do a lot of Mac questions.
And just some Apple stuff, yeah. That's good.
It's not exactly the kind of Apple stuff. I know it's making you a little queasy. Like, we're gonna take this laptop, this beautiful Mac laptop. Now that I don't need it anymore because I've replaced it with a Linux laptop, and we're gonna put Chrome OS on it.
That's good. New life for old Macs is great.
It is, actually. It's going to be kind of interesting. And by the way, we haven't tried it yet. So we're going to do this live and see how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, under promise. That's good.
Yeah. So I doubt it will work. Okay. I very much doubt it will work. First, before we get to our questions, what else? SSD, we're going to part two, finally, of Allyn Malventano's SSD explainer. We thought we'd get the guy from PC Perspective and This Week in Computer Hardware, Allyn Malventano, to explain everything you'd ever want to know about SSDs, including whether you should defrag them. The answer might surprise you.
Ooh.
System76 came through for me. I unboxed my Linux laptop on Wednesday, and I trashed it immediately. Like immediately, like I blew it up. But fortunately, the tech guys at System76 came through the rescue on Thursday. They told me what to do. I got it back up and running, and I'm going to give you a review. Nice. If you're looking for a laptop that comes with Linux on it, I'm going to tell you what this is all about. We're going to visit Uzbekistan.
Yeah, not an actual place, but a state of mind.
Stands for Universal Battery Elimination Circuits.
Oh boy, man. I've been dreaming of this day.
Father Robert, of course he found it. It involves a young priest and an old priest. Okay.
That's right. They walk into a bar?
And then we're going to answer some Apple questions. But first, the top news of the day. I'm really curious what people think about this one. And I brought it up on the radio show, and then the phones went out, so I couldn't really find out. But, when we first joined Facebook, the promise of Facebook was all your friends and family would be there, and you would see what they were up to in roughly chronological order, right? Then Facebook decided, no, your feed is not interesting enough. We're going to rearrange this to make it better. They call it algorithmic. I mean, it's using a computer algorithm, and it turns out maybe some human input to rearrange the feed. Then Twitter started doing something similar.
Right, they're sort of like what you missed while you were
away. And that's not everything you missed. That's just what it thinks is the best stuff that you missed,
right.
I think. Yeah. And actually, I don't mind that because you see that, and then you go on with the chronological feed.
Right.
So it's not like you've abandoned chronological. Well, now Instagram joins the family. Of course, they're owned by Facebook. They say, look at this. Actually, I want to show the blog post. Do you have their blog post? Because I love how they spin it. It's not, we're going to take your feed that's been chronological all this time, and we're going to chop it up and remix it. It's something like, now you'll finally get to see what you really want to see on
Thanks,
Instagram. See the moments you care about first. It's a hallmark headline right there.
Right. Well, I think it all depends on how you use these services, right? Since the last time you were there, 500 posts have appeared in your timeline, you're never going to read all 500, and maybe there's value in floating up the 50 that they think you're gonna like the most. That's how I use Instagram. I don't go to Instagram.
You don't read it all?
No, I don't go there often enough to do that. I go there every few days. I'm like, oh, right, Instagram, and I'll go and I'll look.
But
and so for me, that would work. But my daughter, like, she lives on Instagram. She goes there all the time, and she is a completist, and it's going to be terrible for her.
Instagram says, on average, people miss 70% of their feeds. There's a lot of pictures that you're not seeing on Instagram. I am like your daughter. Well, in only one respect.
Yeah. Sure. Well, she also is running a weird laptop with strange software on it. So.
Yes, she does, actually. So we'll talk about that. I'm so sorry. But she must be a great disappointment to you. But I do the same thing. I'll look at Instagram until I see a picture I saw already, and then I'll stop. So in other words, I'm looking at everything because I don't want to miss anything. But I look at Instagram at least once a day.
Well, there's these two use cases, right? Which is why there should probably be a setting.
Right.
And I'm actually okay with the idea that these services should make the algorithmic timeline the default, because I think most people do miss most stuff. But if you're a completist, it really sucks to have the algorithmic timeline. So I think the problem is Instagram isn't offering an off switch for this, as far as I can tell.
And then I also wonder, well, how the hell do they know what I want to see? Is it based on my likes? Because I don't like that much stuff on Instagram. I mean, I like it, but I don't like it. I don't press the heart button. So I'm not giving them that signal. So what are they going to do? Are they just going to make up what I want to see? And I'm worried that it might be more ads.
They may look at popularity. If you don't, I would hope that liking or commenting on things from specific people would be the #1 signal that they would look for. But then they probably are looking for the most popular things in your feed.
Right
trying
there.
To show those to you, because who doesn't want to see kitties?
You don't get better than that. 2 kittens.
And a computer.
And a computer.
Is you right there. 2 kittens and a computer.
Yeah, I don't post that much, but when I do.
It's cats and a computer?
It's computers and cats and Kate Patello. Hey, I want to know what you think of this. Tony Fidel leaving Nest. Now, Tony started with General Magic. I remember Bill Atkinson talked about him on our triangulation interview. Then went to Apple, where he created the iPod, among other
he's
things.
basically the father of the iPod.
He says that. Others say maybe not quite.
Well, if there's anybody, he was a prime mover in the early days of the iPod. I mean, yes, there are a lot of people who can take credit for the iPod, including Steve Jobs and Tony Fidel, absolutely.
Right. I mean, but that's a big deal. Then, of course, started Nest, the thermostat company, and
sold it to Google.
And I think was very successful before the sale to Google, less so afterwards.
I agree.
And I wonder, was this the plan all along? Was Tony Fidel going to be at Google a couple of years and, as many do, leave, wait till his stock vests and go do something he wants to do? Or is this pressure from Alphabet, the parent company, saying, hey, Tony, Nest is not doing so well right now? And its first stumble was the smoke detector that allowed you to turn it off forever by waving at it. That turned out to be a little safety hazard. They had to fix that. And then Nest most recently had an update that turned it off, so people's houses were freezing overnight. And then also, I think sales went down because people realized a $250 thermostat. Do I really need a smart thermostat?
I really like the thermostat.
Do you use a Nest?
I do. I bought the first generation Nest, and I think that's one of the problems that I see with the company is that they've released 3 generations of the Nest, but you really couldn't tell. It essentially is the same thing. It's missing some features that are baffling, like remote sensors, so that you can stick a sensor somewhere else.
And the competitor, Ecobee, does that.
Ecobee does that right out of the box, and you can buy extra sensors. And Nest, there's a very expensive solution that'll let you do it with a third party. But why they don't support that and haven't supported it for years and have made very little progress on the software side, it's a little bit baffling. And then throw in that they did come into Google at a very strange time where it was before Alphabet. So it was sort of, are they part of the mix? Are they not? It was really unclear. And I feel like the Alphabet organization simplifies things a little bit and maybe allows Nest to be their own thing, maybe. But maybe it was too late for all of this. There was too much of a mess here.
Everybody in the world is doing, Wi-Fi programmable or learning thermostats. But also, and I'm this guy, I had Nests, and when I moved, I didn't install it because it's like, well, it's a lot of work. And the truth is, my $25 programmable thermostat's fine.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's better. But even in the smart thermostat world, they have been caught by their
There's a lot of
competition. And
competition.
they were way ahead. And that's my thing is they were way ahead and then decided to do this smoke alarm. And they kind of lost the plot of the thermostat. And now it's just, I mean, it looks pretty. I love the design of it, but it's just another smart thermostat at this point.
You know what, I'm interested. Google now has hired Rick Osterloh, the guy who was at Motorola, and was, briefly a Google employee, then a Lenovo employee. He's left Motorola, and he's in charge of hardware at Google. And I have a feeling smart hardware is going to be big at Google. I think when Tony leaving at this point is basically him saying, but I'm not going to be part of that.
Yeah.
And that's too bad. Because I think he has some vision.
It's a tough situation because Google obviously has its own smart home initiatives that it's doing, like the Google Home, which is coming out of the Chromecast group. And then there's Nest. So where does Nest fit?
Right.
And how do they interact? And do they or do they not? And it's still a really weird situation where are they going to build competitive products to Google, or are they going to be cut off from some of their ecosystem?
They're a separate company.
Because Google says, no, we want to do that. It's really unclear. It's a tough situation to be in.
Last story, and there's nothing to say here except what? The Tribune Company, great publisher, the Chicago Tribune, the Los Angeles Times. I think they have 10 or 11 newspapers all over the country. They're kind of in play. People have been aiming at them.
Yeah, Gannett is trying to buy them.
The USA Today folks want to buy them.
Yeah.
They changed their name to Tronc.
Yeah, Tronc. Doesn't he play for the New England Patriots?
What the hell is Tronc?
Well, it believe it or not, it stands for Tribune Online Content, which doesn't make it any better. But then whoever came up with that bumped their head, and all that came out was Tronc.
Why not just Gronk?
Yeah, Tronc.
Gronk.
Tronc.
Tronc.
Tronc is Hodor's brother.
Hodor. Tronc. Have you met
It means something longer, but all we know now is all he can say is Tronc.
I'm glad you told me it's Tribune Online Company.
I think it's online content.
Because I had no idea. I just thought, Tronc?
Yeah, for synergy and systems.
It sounds like a caveman.
Yeah.
All right.
Tronc invented the wheel. They've named after a famous. So anyway, Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University. Congratulations, you're now named for the founder of Tronc.
All right, let's get our first call for help on the air. Tronc. It's Doug from Texas. Hello, Doug.
Hello, Leo. Hello, Jason.
Whoa.
Hey, Doug.
Doug, you must be a professional podcaster. You have a Heil PR40 and a Twit t-shirt.
How about that, huh? I always wanted to be a podcaster.
That's great. Why do you have a Heil mic?
Well, that's kind of a dream. I'm in my mid-60s, and I'm getting ready to go into my next career in the next couple of years, and I'm thinking about getting into podcasting.
I love your setup. Wow. Is this your man cave?
This is a Mac cave, yeah?
Yeah.
Totally Mac.
All Mac all the time.
Nice.
Have you heard the good word about Linux?
Don't stop.
No. Enough Linux, Leo.
I do feel like a cult member. All right, what can we do? What can we do to help you, Doug?
Well, Leo, I have I took your advice a couple months ago, and I, the Apple late model Apple time machine's getting a little long in the tooth.
Yep.
And I replaced it with the Archer AC 1750.
Not my advice. Oh, well, actually, it was my advice, but that's from the Wirecutter. They picked that as their favorite wireless router. How do you like it?
Works great. Works fantastic.
Yeah.
The only trouble is that I was all Apple ready. I've got the T-shirt and drunk the Kool-Aid, and I've got a Apple time machine and a couple Airport Expresses.
Wow.
And
you're like me. I have those Airport Expresses just sitting in a drawer because I don't know what to do with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you know what? They're great. They're really compact little Wi-Fi routers that you could just use anywhere. I have a couple of the new ones and about 3 or 4 of the old ones with the plug coming off the side of it. Yeah. So what can we do to help you? You want to know what to do with those? Is that it? Or?
Well, especially on the time machine, I hate to waste that 3 terabyte hard drive inside there.
Oh, the time capsule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd like to use that as an external drive. But I'd like to, I've got all the data off and everything, and I want to reformat. But I cannot figure out how to reformat that hard drive.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's easy to take it out. You take the lid off of that thing. In fact, if you buy an airport extreme router, there's this like empty air in there, which is where you would put the hard drive.
Yeah, because they use the same enclosure for both.
It's a laptop hard drive, right? A 2.5?
I think so.
Yeah. And why couldn't you format it?
So I think the airport utility is supposed to let you format the drive. I think that's how that's supposed to work.
It's just a standard drive, though, right?
But so you can't plug it into a computer. You have to have it on the network, which means you then need to sort of remote control it by having the airport utility, which I think on Time Machine lets you do some drive formatting and things like that. But it makes it an external drive, but it's a network attached drive. I think if you want to use it as a true external drive, you probably want to pull the drive out and buy an enclosure and then attach it to your Mac.
But you could format it there, right?
And you should be able to format it there.
It's just a standard drive once you get it out of the time capsule.
Right. Or what you could do is leave it in there, format it, turn off the Wi-Fi routing and all of that stuff, and just have it be a network disk.
And let the Apple firmware continue to manage it.
You could just turn off the Wi-Fi, but it needs to be on your network.
Right. So you'd have to plug it in via Ethernet, basically. So what do you want to take it and put it in a computer? Do you want to use it as a network attached storage device? What do you want to do with it, Doug?
I just want to use it for more storage, that's all.
Would you be willing to buy a USB enclosure?
Sure.
Okay, well, that should work just fine.
I think that would be the safest thing to do, because then you're not getting Apple software in the way that is really built to have it be this remote network disk that you use for backup. You could just pull the disk out, and if whatever the standard size is, it will fit in a standard enclosure. It's just a hard drive.
I'm sure it's a 2.5-inch laptop drive, I would guess.
Yeah, I think so.
So you have to make sure you have an enclosure that will work with it. The thing that's different, there we go. This is iFixit. There you go. Can we figure out, do they say what kind of drive it is? It looks like you could put any old drive in there, right? I would guess that's
iFixit, huh?
Yeah, iFixit's great for this kind of stuff. And we should, little disclaimer, they have been a sponsor in the past. Wow, that maybe looks like a standard SATA drive. I can't really, it's a SATA.
It's a full-size drive.
It's a full-size SATA drive.
Because the capacity's so large, Wow.
Oh, because it's a terabyte.
Because it's a backup drive,
Yeah.
All right, so you get a full-size USB enclosure and pop it in there, and then you've got a regular old USB drive with your 3 terabytes.
Take it apart first.
It's the easiest.
Now, if you have a Linux machine, it's really...
Disk utility will do the trick once you get it in there. Just use disk utility.
I was going to recommend Gparded, but of course, disk utility.
Disk utility also is available. And then for the little Airport Expresses that you've got, one of the challenges with Wi-Fi is that the Apple stuff doesn't really play well with other routers of other brands.
So I've been using Airport Expresses to extend Wi-Fi, and they're really great for that. And it's very simple in the Airport utility.
Right.
You just say make an extended, add it to an existing network, extend it.
But it's got to be all Apple for that to work.
Apple's using though a standard technology, WDS, wireless distribution system. And I've said this before, the problem with the standard is it's very loosely written.
Yes.
So just because something is WDS compatible doesn't mean it's compatible with other WDS devices. What I have found is that it generally works if you're using the same chipset, whether it's Atheros or Broadcom or whatever the wireless chipset is inside of there. It should work with a router that has the same chipset. The problem is going to be the software and how you configure it. And I'm not even sure what you would do.
And Apple doesn't support that, right? Apple wants it to be all Apple. So what I would say is...
I've seen people say you can do it,
You can try it. The other thing to do is find a place in your house that's got Ethernet. And
just use it as a standalone
and just
router.
make another access point in that place, which is what I do in my house. I've got a second access point that's attached via Ethernet, but you have to use Ethernet to connect to it instead of having it extend via wireless.
It's funny, I did the same thing. I bought an Asus router. That's our main house-wide routing, and it was such a good router that I didn't have to do extenders anymore. But then in my little den, my office, I went to Comcast I bought Comcast. Oh, it's a long story. I bought Comcast Business Class, right? And I thought that they would turn off the consumer internet that I was buying from them, but no, of course not, because that's a different division. So I went in, and they said, well, you could turn it off. But in fact, it wouldn't save you any money, because the minute you turn it off your internet access, we're going to raise your cable bill. So why don't you just keep it? So now I have and actually it's great to have the redundancy. It's expensive, but now I have an Airport Extreme in my office that feeds the office with it's really fast. The consumer grade internet they provide is actually a little faster than the business class, but it's then there's no SLA, there's no liability guarantee, things like that. So I have both. So that's what you could do. You could have, or you could he, as long as you don't name it the same, it wouldn't conflict, right?
Well, in fact, you could name it the same with the same password.
I've done that,
and it works most of the time.
Yeah,
sometimes
it's a little weird.
If you drop one, it'll go to the other. And what you do is you take on the Airport Express in this case, you turn off all of the network address translation and DHCP and all those things. You shut those all off using the airport
and
utility.
let your base router do that.
And the base router does all of that kind of stuff, and all it's doing is relaying the data into the network. And it will usually work fairly well. If you're in a far-off part of your house and it loses connection to one thing, it will find another base station with the same name and the same password, and it'll just pick up and proceed on.
Doug, what kind of podcast do you want to do if you do one?
There's too many Apple podcasts out there. Jason's got a good one, and
I got a good one. I got a good one.
Yeah.
I got a good one.
Are you converting that to Linux too?
20 of them. Yeah. So I'm really up in the air about it. I like history quite a bit.
I'm thinking Linux Break Weekly has a certain.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think finding what you're saying is good. Finding something you love and you're really excited about is the way to go for picking what you want to do a podcast about.
Yeah.
Do it about something you're really excited about and that you love.
Podcast your passion is how I've always said it. So,
yeah, my significant other, she's a photographer, and I want to help her with her business.
There you go.
Yeah, down here in South Texas, we have a Hispanic community, and quinceañeros are very big.
Yes,
and
the
that's
15th birthday.
Right,
yeah, those are big birthdays.
Yeah. So right now, she's at one right now.
I love going to quinceañeros. It is a party. Yeah. How fun.
So, yeah.
Do the quinceañeros photography podcast.
There you go. Maybe make an iBook on top of that,
Weren't we just saying the more narrow the niche, the more passionate your fans are?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, it's great to meet you, Doug. I hope we'll hear more from you, okay?
Okay, Leo.
Take care.
See you later. See you, Jason.
Bye-bye. Next week, another Jason joins us. It's Jason's, as you said.
all the way down.
All the way down. Jason,
we're everywhere.
Jason Calacanis will be our. Jason is such a character. I can always look forward to it. I guess he's got some sort of reality TV show.
Of course he does.
In the works. So we'll find out more about that, and we'll answer your tech questions. If you got a question for me or Jason, here's how you can get on the show.
Need tech help? The new screensavers are here with answers. Email your tech questions to newscreensavers@twit.tv.
Coming up in just a little bit, we're going to learn more about SSDs, and I am going to show you how you could take an old, slow, junky computer and kind of reinvigorate it. A lot of schools and businesses are taking their old machines and putting Chrome OS on it. It turns out there's a company that lets you do that. I have made myself a USB key. We're going to attempt to Chrome OS my Mac in just a little bit. I'm sorry, this has really turned into a really anti-Mac show, and it shouldn't, because I love Macintosh. What's not to love about Macintosh? In fact, I'm really excited about WWDC.
Oh yeah.
Do you think we're going to see? I'm holding out hope we're going to see new MacBook Pros.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's long overdue at this point.
And there was a rumor OLED function keys on the top.
That's a weird rumor. But
that is weird.
It may be. We'll see.
But that would imply like a total redesign. And that would be cool.
You would think, yeah.
That would be cool. So I'm waiting for that. I'm holding out hope for that. Yeah. Meanwhile, let's talk about our sponsor, ladies and gentlemen, PillPack. It's a better kind of pharmacy. A pharmacy that, like so many of our sponsors, is using the internet and technology to give you better service. PillPack is by mail. They're there 24/7. In fact, one of the best parts of PillPack is the human interaction. You can talk to a pharmacist any time of the day or night by phone. So if you're worried about what your medications interactions are doing, if you want to know more about dosing or how something works, you just call them. It could be 3 in the morning. You just call them and you ask them, and they're very nice and very helpful. But really, the name PillPack comes from the amazing innovation. The PillPack itself. See, when you're getting pills in the PillPack pharmacy, you get them in these little pouches that are so cool. The box comes with your name on it, the date, exactly what your medications are, pictures of the medication, and I'll tell you why that's important in a second, plus dosing information. Now, inside, all rolled up, are these pill packs. And every single part of the day, every single time you're taking a medication, you're going to rip off the pill pack. It's very easy to open. I like that. And there it is. There's your pill for the day. There's never again a question, did I take my pills this morning? Or did I forget to take them last night? And man, if you travel a lot, this is such a great thing. You just tear off the packs you need, throw them in your carry-on, and you've got it. And of course, the TSA recognizes this so that there's no question about what's in here. These are sealed. It's very compact. It's very easy. And I love it that the date, the pills, and the time are on it. Now, I mentioned that the image is also on it. And that's important because they use image recognition technology when they pack the pill pack to make sure you're getting exactly the medications that have been prescribed. And then the pharmacist checks it one more time. So they're looking here, okay, yeah, that's correct, at each and every pill pack. This is such a great idea. If if you're on medication or you take vitamins and you're filling one of those little pill minders, don't do it. Get yourself a pill pack. It'll change your life. This is a better pharmacy, medication simplified, and I want you to try it right now. And by the way, they take your insurance, almost all kinds of insurance, including most forms of Medicare Part D, and that means there's no additional cost. There's no shipping cost. All you pay is your normal copay. So this is just like any other pharmacy. It's covered by your insurance, and it's just so much better. They've made your life easier, and they have frankly disrupted the pharmacy industry, and I love seeing that. Here's what I want you to do. Visit pillpack.com/twit. Sign up now. It only takes 5 minutes to get started. And you'll get a credit for $20 worth of vitamins and over-the-counter medication when you do. pillpack.com/twit. So we actually get this question fairly often. What can I do with an old computer, Windows or Mac?
Yep.
I want to revitalize it. In the past, the answer has often been, well, it's too old to run a modern version of OS 10 or Windows. Maybe you should put Linux on it. I was never really happy with that answer because that's kind of from the fire and for the frying pan into the fire
right.
for some people. Even though Ubuntu and some of these more modern Linux distributions are very straightforward and easy to install. But what about Chrome OS? Now, Google, I don't think really intended for Chrome OS ever to be installed in anything but a Chromebook.
Sure. But
it turns out it is an open source operating system. It's an open source project, Chrome OS. The open source project is called Chromium OS. Mm-hmm. And it's completely possible. In fact, if you go to the Chromium OS page, they'll tell you how to build it. You have to compile it yourself and build it. So it's not an easy thing to do. But build your own Chrome OS. We found a company called Neverware that has done that. There's the Chromium OS project. And you can't like just go there and download an image and run an installer, which is too bad. But if you know what you're doing, you could make one. And that's what these guys at Neverware have done. They're doing a value add. This is kind of traditional in the open source world. You have free software, and they do give it away for non-commercial use free. But they make their money on service and support. So if you're doing this at a business or a school, they'll charge you $49 per device per year, $25 for a school, and that way you get the Google Management Console, you get support, they will certify compatibility. There's a lot of additional stuff, automatic updates. However, I think for a lot of people, the free version is a very interesting way to go. You said your daughter uses a Chromebook.
Yeah, absolutely, because most of the stuff that she's doing in school is Google apps, essentially.
Yeah. And a lot of schools are doing this.
Yeah.
All right. So I went to Neverware. A couple of tips, by the way. I was having a devil of a time installing this. If you go to Neverware and you go to the For Home option and download now for free, it looks pretty simple. What they're going to tell you to do is install a Chrome. Actually, I'll go to the installation instructions on their support page. I found those a little bit easier to read. They're going to tell you to install a Chrome extension that Google creates that's designed for recovering damaged Chromebooks, the Chromebook Recovery Utility. And I've used this in the past. The Chromebook Recovery Utility makes this a lot easier because it will actually take the image that you download from the Neverware site and I can't do it in Linux. That's ironic, isn't it? Damn! But you can do it on a Mac, or you can do it on Windows. It will take the downloaded image and actually put it on a USB key. It'll even erase the key for you. It makes it very straightforward. It's a really handy utility, and that's free from Google. But one tip for you, if you're doing this on a Macintosh, download the image in Safari. Turns out that the Macintosh's unzipping program kind of damages the file in a kind of obscure way and causes the boot to fail, or the image making to fail. So somebody in the chat room said, I've tried this like 3 times on different keys and stuff. And he said, oh yeah, this is a known problem. Use Safari, either use Safari to download it, or use a free program, which I use all the time on my Mac, called the Unarchiver. You've probably seen this.
Absolutely.
And that will unzip the file properly. But anyway, I did it in Safari. Safari, when it sees a zip file, unzips it, creates a .bin file. And now I need to reboot and hold down the Option key, right? Because that's how you get a Macintosh.
That's how you boot off of, you go into the boot screen where you can choose which volume you want to boot from.
Oh boy,
all the visible
this is
volumes.
exciting. So I'm going to close out some of these apps here.
Yeah.
And I am going to go to my reboot, and I'm going to hold down the Option key. So you can't, oh, what am I doing? You can't see this. So, oh, you can see it. Wow, but I have to point it at you, okay? So let's restart and hold down the Option key on here. Now, as I said, I've inserted the USB key. I made that image from downloading the image at neverwhere.com. So what do you think of this idea?
I think it's a great idea. We are going to talk about another approach later for more modern Mac systems, but getting more life out of a laptop, especially people who watch shows like this who are a little more tech savvy. You know, you buy some new tech and you buy it when you may have your old tech still be usable for something.
Right.
What do you do with it? You can take it to the recycler and they'll take it apart. But much better to find another place that it could be useful, in a school or for a friend or a friend's kid or one of your kids or whatever. So yeah, so we got 2 bootable volumes here. We got the Macintosh hard drive and we got your install stick.
It says EFI boot. So let's see if it'll boot from this. And again, I haven't done this yet because I didn't want to do it and then redo it, right? So now one of the nice things about a Mac is it's trivial to get this back to the way it was. Of course, you'll want to back up if you want your data, but if all you want to do is reinstall OS X, if you boot it up by hold down the Command R key, you'll go into recovery mode. And if you're online, it'll even download and install the operating system it came with over the internet.
Right. So that generally you can get it back in shape, and if you have trouble, you can also boot it with the T key held down, which enters target mode, and then you can plug in a FireWire or Thunderbolt cable, and it'll mount as a hard drive, and you can reformat it and install that way too.
Apple does not offer a USB key though with OS X on it. You have to make your own.
But you can make them, and there are ways to make those from another Mac as well.
Actually, my advice: anytime you get a big upgrade, we just had OS X, El Capi 10, or you actually can do it now. Go to the Apple Store and download the El Capi 10, and before you do the install, go online and look up how to make a bootable USB key from that file. That file by itself won't do it, but there are files inside the package. You can open the package contents, get those files out, and make a bootable USB key that has El Capi 10 on it. That is a great idea for anybody who has a Macintosh, because remember, part of the boot is you get disk utility on there, so you have some recovery tools that you can also use.
Yeah,
very handy.
My former colleague at Macworld, Dan Frakes, wrote, I think he's still writing them every time a new version comes out. He tests all of those.
Yeah. And
so if you just do a Google search for, install OS X on a flash drive, you'll find
it's very easy to do.
Yeah.
One of the neat things is that USB
even
keys,
the Apple installer page says, here's how you create a
Oh,
bootable
Apple tells
installer.
you. Nice.
You can do it yourself.
Nice.
Good for them for doing
Yeah,
that.
they have a command and terminal create install media. That's new. I don't remember that.
Yeah,
being
no,
around
they used
before.
to not talk about it.
Okay, that's very handy.
That's good.
Everybody, for every operating system, this is true of Windows too, should have a boot disk so that you can fix simple problems by booting into hardware. Something's happening. I see it checking this every once in a while, the USB key.
Anything on the screen at all?
Nothing's on the screen though. Maybe it's not going to work. I don't know. This is obviously kind of a geeky thing to do.
Sure, but if you get it up and running, then the beauty of Chrome OS is that it will do some updates and things like that.
Well, that's it.
Kind of keep it
Even if you get the
alive.
free version, don't worry. You're still going to get updated automatically. Power. Now, I don't know if you get Power Wash. You must, right? That's not a hardware thing. That's going to be in the software. So all of the benefits the only benefit of a Chromebook you won't get, and this is not insignificant, Chromebooks also have secure boot firmware in there that means it will not start up if the operating system has been modified.
Right.
That is one of the things that makes Chromebooks so good for your family and friends who are less sophisticated, because if they get a rootkit, if they get a modified operating system, if they somehow get nasty malware on there, it won't boot up if it would be a dangerous thing to do. And then you can invoke Power Wash and wipe the whole thing off and start fresh. So there's never any risk of, and because it's a Chromebook, all your data is stored in your Google account.
Cloud, yeah.
So you immediately log in and you're there. That's why
imagine
it's
your
great for
operating
schools.
system being completely disposable.
Well, I don't know. Maybe this isn't going to work. I was really hopeful. We'll keep working on this. I don't want to do this. It's
on today's show.
It's blinking the blue light. The little blue light was blinking. So I don't know what's going on. We'll keep working.
Yeah.
We'll keep working.
It's a nice idea. And we've got some other ideas coming up.
Tahir is coming up with I want you to work, Neverwhere. Come on, man. Come on, man. I'm believing in you.
I compel you.
He's a young priest. Up next, we have a call for help with Tahir. He's having drive issues with his MacBook.
Yeah.
This is MacBook Drive Day.
It is.
Think you can help him?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I got some ideas.
He's coming up. First, a reminder, whether you've got a Mac or Windows or even Linux, can you believe it? Audible.com works on Linux.
You wouldn't go to Linux if it didn't.
I wouldn't.
No.
I wouldn't. In fact, I remember Cory Doctorow, my good friend, who every time he went, he buys Lenovo's and makes them Linux machines. And the one thing that frosts him is he wasn't able to run his Audible books on there. Well, good news for you, Cory. If you're using Chromium or a modern browser, Audible has HTML5 playback on its pages, so you can listen to Audible wherever you are, in the car, on your phone. They've got great Audible apps for every platform. I'm a huge Audible fan. I know you are too, right? You love the audio books.
I love books in all forms, including audio
Yeah.
forms. Yeah.
Audible is something that saved my life, and I've been a member long. They've been advertising with us since 2007, but I've been the Audible customer since 2000 because I was in a very bad situation. I had to commute 2 to 4 hours a day, every single day, down to Tech TV, and it was a nightmare. Fortunately, I discovered audiobooks from Audible in 2000, and it saved me from massive road rage. Now I listen all of the time. Take a look. Oh, there's a great book, Angela's Ashes. Oh, I love that. Frank McCourt reads it in that wonderful Irish accent. It's a sad story, but it's a wonderful story. What do you got?
I got
something you
one
like
for
to
you.
listen to? All right.
Uprooted by Naomi Novik.
You always have books I've never heard of.
I know. That's why I'm here.
Is this a sci-fi book?
This one's fantasy, actually. Naomi Novik wrote a whole series of books called Temeraire that were about dragons. This is not about dragons, but it is about magic and a young girl in a village who is chosen by a wizard. It's really great, actually. It is a beautiful, really wonderful book. It won the Nebula Award from the Fantasy and Science Fiction Writers Association as the best novel of the year.
Wow.
And it's great.
I always read the Hugo and the Nebula winners, because you figure if it's going to be the best of the year.
Well, this is the Nebula, and we'll see, who wins the Hugo this year. But
Hugo's been a little controversial.
It is. That's why I'm reading all the Nebula nominees now and not the Hugo nominees
really?
anymore.
Interesting. Huh?
Yeah, but Uprooted is great. The 5th season by N.K. Jemisin is also really great.
I love
bunch
her.
of really good books. Yeah, her new series starts with the 5th season. Very, very good stuff. So.
Well, here's the deal. We're going to get you your first book free. Go to audible.com/NSS. That's our special page for people who listen to New Screensavers. That'll be a little signal to them that you heard it on the New Screensavers. What they're going to do is sign you up for the Gold account. That's the book a month subscription. With that, you get a credit for a book. And by the way, 99.5% of all the books are on a single credit. There are a few really long ones that are multiple credits. You could save up for those. And you also get the daily digest of the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times as part of the deal. Audible.com/NSS. Cancel anytime in the first 30 days. You'll pay nothing, but that book will be yours forever. That's why it's important you pick well.
Indeed.
Pick well. Are you ready? We got a caller from Pennsylvania. Tahir couldn't join us live, but made this recording.
Hey, Leo and Jason, thank you for taking my call. This is Tahir from Malvern, Pennsylvania. I had a question regarding my 2010, it's a mid-2010 MacBook Pro. It's been running really slow. I know it's 6 years old, but it's been running really slow. And for example, if I play a song, the song gets stuck for a couple of seconds in between. So my guess was it's a hard disk that is the issue. So I was wondering, is there a way to figure out what the issue is, if it is with the hard drive? And if it is the hard drive, is there a way I can replace that? It's a spinning hard drive. If I can replace that with a SSD.
Well, first,
thank you for taking my question.
Thank you, Tahir. Is his hypothesis right?
I love it when the questioners answer their own questions inside the question. It is almost certainly the hard drive.
Really?
I just did this with a 2008 MacBook Pro, and I did it with a 2012 Mac Mini. The hard drive, the spinning hard drive,
it's the first thing to go.
It's the first thing. I mean, there's RAM. You know, sometimes you can have not enough RAM, and that can make your computer slow. But the spinning hard drive is the thing that's making your old computer slow.
Yeah.
And an SSD can give it a shot in the arm. Both of those devices, the old MacBook Pro and the old Mac Mini, that I put a solid state drive in. I removed the old spinning drive, replaced it with a solid state drive. And they're not like new, like something I would buy today, but for a lot less money, they're usable again, like shockingly usable again.
You know, I think we're going to do an SSD segment with Allyn Malventano, and I think on this one, which was pre-recorded, I did ask him, well, do you have to say, is it a really old machine? Is the bus not fast enough? He said it doesn't matter because it's so much faster, even if it's saturating the bus. At least it's saturating the bus. Your old hard drive wasn't. So
yeah, your computer is waiting for the hard drive.
It's waiting most of the time.
Most of the time, and so on.
Yeah.
So, and we talk about Mac compatibility. That 2008 MacBook Pro that I upgraded can run El Capitan, because Apple hasn't dropped its software requirements in a very long time. So I installed that SSD, and there are great instructions on it. Like I use the iFixit instructions to do it. Getting into a laptop is actually a lot easier than getting into something like a Mac Mini too. So for Tahir, I think that it's going to be a pretty straightforward upgrade to get in the bottom of his MacBook Pro and pull it open and pop in an SSD to replace the spinning drive that's in there now, and it'll feel like a brand new system.
We actually did it to this MacBook Pro, this 2012 MacBook Pro. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 screws. These are the weird torque screws, right? The pentalobe screws.
Yeah, and you can get online, you can get a toolkit. If you don't have these tools,
iFixit has one.
iFixit has it. OWC has one. They're out there.
Actually, you know what I did is I went to OWC, which is macsales.com.
Macsales.com, right?
And there are other people that sell these, but I always buy the upgrade stuff from them because they're focused on Macs, so you can tell them which model you have exactly.
Yeah, and you can pick your model, and it will say, this is the drive you should get. And then they've got instructions of their own, plus you could use the iFixit instructions if you want. They'll give you a toolkit.
It comes with the screwdriver you need.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to do anything. I mean, it's a disposable. It's not the best screwdriver you ever got in the world, but it's enough. It comes with everything you need.
Yeah, and iFixit's toolkit is great too. I mean, there are a bunch of great options out here, but they're designing it to make it easy for you to do the upgrade because they want you to buy the hard drive.
Right.
And they'll make sure you've got the tools to do the job and the instructions to do the job, and it really helps. It is a major improvement.
Don't be intimidated, in other words. It's not,
if you're
it's
going
not
to
a hard
upgrade a
thing
Mac
to do.
Mini, that's a little bit intimidating. You kind of have to disassemble it. But these laptops, the way that they're designed, they're flat. You just pop off the bottom, and all the components are visible. It's very easy to do, and it will really make the computer much better.
Do you think it's possible that's one of the reasons I'm having trouble getting Chrome on here is because it has an aftermarket? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Hard drive?
I don't think so.
I don't think there are any disadvantages. I even did, in fact, we have a couple of know-hows because I did this on episode 10 of Know-How. I think it was this laptop. One of the ways you could do it, there you go. One of the ways you can do it, I think it is that laptop, is replace, if you have an old one that has a CD-ROM drive, you can actually take your old drive and put it in the CD-ROM drive and have two hard drives on there. And nowadays with CD-ROMs, you don't really need a CD-ROM that much anymore. So I think this is a good upgrade. Everybody should do it.
Yeah, it really does make those old laptops. If you have that old laptop and you're afraid to give it to a friend because it's just too lousy, put an SSD in it, and then it will be a perfectly suitable laptop for them.
This is also something people do more of now because, frankly, the processors of 4 years ago are fine.
They really are.
The video cards of 4 years ago are fine. We're now at the stage of computing where the stuff you bought 4 or 5 years ago seems old, but it isn't. it's just as good. If you replace the one part that wears out, the spinning part, with an SSD, you can really get another 4 or 5 years out of that.
Really making sure that the RAM is maybe maxed out.
Max out the RAM is a big one too.
And put an SSD in there, and that computer, you will be surprised at how useful that computer is. The fact that Apple can continue to make old Macs compatible with their latest version of their operating system shows you how capable those systems really are. They can run the latest. They just need
Isn't that amazing?
a faster hard drive and maybe make sure you've got all the RAM you can get.
And this is in direct contrast to your smartphone and your tablet, which really have no user serviceable parts inside.
Yeah.
An old iPad, even just a few years old iPad,
There's nothing you can do.
You're just stuck. So that's one of the reasons Apple still makes it easy for you to do this upgrade. So I'm glad about that.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of SSDs, we want to help you buy the right SSD, and then once you get one, how to maintain it, how to use it. We started our conversation, Allyn Malventano, a couple of weeks ago. He is the SSD expert at PC Perspective, PCPer.com, and a regular on our This Week in Computer Hardware show. Part 2 now of our discussion on SSDs with Allyn Malventano. We had so much fun talking with Allyn Malventano a couple of weeks ago. It's time for part 2 of our SSD Explain Everything so you can understand it. Allyn Malventano writes about SSDs and other hardware for PC Perspective at PCPer.com as a regular on our This Week in Computer Hardware show. Hey, Allyn.
Hey, how's it going?
So I think we covered kind of the beginnings. I hope enough to convince people that buying an SSD in your next computer would be a good idea, and that even maybe in many computers upgrading to an SSD would be a good idea. But I think there's also, and I hear it every time I tell people that, there are a lot of myths about SSDs versus hard drives. What are the biggest myths that you would like to bust about SSDs?
I think the largest one out there is probably the reliability and retention. There's a lot of fear that their data is just going to evaporate or something if it's not stored magnetically.
Right.
Yeah.
What do we know? I mean, are these as reliable?
Well, I have a slide that I can kind of talk to here, and that's the actual JEDEC, the standards body that governs, okay, if a company is going to release an SSD and they're going to claim that their SSD has so much endurance, then there's rules for what they're allowed to do. So the SSD will be such a capacity, it'll be a 500 gig SSD, and it'll be rated for something like 40 or 80 terabytes written. So you could write that drive hundreds of times filled and then fill it again over and over and over again. And it would take average Joe just using an SSD just for regular computer tasks. They're not going to hit this limit probably in a decade.
A decade? Right? Well, that's plenty of time.
It would probably take them that long to get through all that stuff. And even that's kind of a conservative number to use there. They probably go even, if they're just checking email and playing games occasionally, they're going to go longer than that. The SSD is probably going to outlast them. But going back to that standards thing, so for a consumer SSD, there's a rating of 1 year worth of data retention, and that's at the end of life at the SSD. So that assumes that you have expended all of the possible rights to it. You have just worn that thing down to just nothing, basically. And even then, you should be able to take it out of that system, put it on a shelf for 52 weeks, and it should still hold the data. We had some discussion on one of the threads on our site recently. People were wondering, hey, can I buy a brand new SSD and use it for backup? You can. Of course, it's just a storage device. And if you did, you're only writing to it a couple of times there. And it will hold data for much longer because you haven't worn out the flash at all. It's basically brand new.
So there's no reason to worry about reliability when it comes to an SSD. They're at least as reliable as a spinning hard drive.
Yeah, you're still going to have things like component failures. You're still going to have things
that's going to happen, right?
Yeah, like in what's called infant mortality, which is where if you have a component on there that's just a defect, and it'll probably fail within a few months' time.
Is it fair to say that almost everybody should consider an SSD? I know they're a little bit more expensive, but that the performance boost is significant enough that almost everybody should consider an SSD for a new computer and even for upgrading an old computer?
You should at least consider it. And then the biggest misnomer there is don't do only the SSD. If you have a lot of stuff to store, put it on the hard drive. Put the bigger stuff on the hard drive. Don't go buying a terabyte's worth of solid state to store all of your stuff that's just going to be sitting in one place, and just you don't need to access it very quickly.
What should we do to maintain our SSDs? Is there anything I need to do to think about?
It has gotten to the point where if you're on any of the more modern operating systems, there's pretty much nothing to change. There's just
Trim
Windows
is turned on by default in Windows and OS 10.
Trim is turned on by default. That means that anytime you delete a file or any file gets moved off of a space, the operating system will let the SSD know, hey, I don't need that place anymore. And then the SSD can, clean that place up with what's called garbage collection. And it just has more extra room to spread the data that you're using or around on the flash.
Why is that important?
When you write to it, it has to do with a thing called wear leveling. So if your operating system kept writing and updating the same place, what would be the same place on a hard disk, you can't do that to flash because it'll actually burn out that spot. So it has to maintain what's just like a mapping table inside of its memory. And while the operating system keeps writing to that same place, it says, okay, go ahead. I'm going to put it there. That's fine. Trust me. But it actually puts it somewhere else physically on the flash, right? And the more of those places that you have assigned that you've had to keep track of, right? That's generally bad for the SSD because it's more work that it has to do, right? It has this huge table of stuff. If you've written to the entire drive, every single place, and unless you are able to tell the drive, hey, I don't need that spot anymore, there has to be some kind of a protocol in place, which is called trim. That frees up those areas because if you recall for hard disks, you could always do like a data recovery. If you delete a file, you didn't actually delete the file, because you're just kind of deleting the entry in the directory, right? For SSDs, as long as trim is in place, when you delete the file's actually gone. Like it might still be sitting in flash somewhere, but the table entry to even look up where it is has now been purged. And chances are it's going to be garbage collected in a short amount of time as well.
So the issue is that each cell on an SSD can only be read to or written to a certain number of times. Is that correct?
The issue is the writing. You could read them as many as you want.
Writing. How many times typically can you write to an MLC or an SLC cell?
It varies by the type of flash, but a good number is generally like around 5,000 or 10,000 times.
That's quite a lot. And then, so they over-provision then to give you a little headroom there, or how does that work?
They do that as well. Consumer drives usually have what's called just over-provisioning.
Extra
it's just
space.
It's extra space. It's not within the range that you can write to. And usually it's somewhere
between... But if a cell gets to the limit of its writability, they'd say, okay, we're not going to use that one anymore. Let's rope in one of these unused cells. And that'll give us hardware. And
there's usually 5 to 7% extra on consumer drives. There's a lot more on enterprise.
When we were building Overgum, of course, we used an M.2 SSD in the Overgum. We talked a little bit about this, and you said actually one way to maintain a drive is to defrag it, which I thought that's the last thing you'd need to do on an SSD.
Well, you're not actually defragging it in the sense of moving a bunch of stuff around. You're just using the Windows defragger, which, by the way, is automatic. It's especially in like
anyway, no matter what.
Well, at Windows 8, Windows 10, like if you've just done a regular install, it not only is automatic, like scheduled weekly, I believe by default, but if it detects that a drive is a solid state drive, and it has a way to do that, it will just do a trim pass of that drive as opposed to a defragment pass. And there are a few cases, they're rare, where some pointers might have just been like really split up logically. Like they're not actually fragmented within the flash, but like Windows has to do a lot of work to look up a particular file. And defrag also can kind of unfragment like those specific cases. And that does mean you have to move around a little bit of stuff, but it's nothing like running an old school defragment where it's trying to rearrange everything on the disk, because that'll just burn through
you don't want to do that. How about on OS 10 on the Macintosh? Same thing?
OS 10 is trim aware.
And it's doing it periodically, automatically?
I believe so, but the thing you have to be careful of on OS 10, if you're upgrading a Mac from a hard drive to a solid state drive, you have to pay attention and either use some kind of, I know there's a trim enabler, which it's become harder and harder to use, but either you have to use an OEM Mac part for it to automatically enable trim for you, since it'll be on like a list within the operating system, or you have to take some steps to kind of force it to enable that.
Anything else I should know? Are there BIOS settings I should pay attention to? Any other settings I should do to maximize my SSD?
Actually, when you were doing your VR build, there were some extra steps you had to go through, which I think were just specific to that board.
Yeah.
The thing that you're going to want to do if you have an NVMe, like M.2 NVMe, one of the brand new SSDs, you're going to want to make your Windows installer, when you make your USB Windows installer, your safest bet is to download the image from Microsoft. When you download the Microsoft, they packages it as a tool that will just put it straight on a USB drive for you.
The media creation tool, Microsoft.
Yeah, the media creation tool.
Yeah.
But you can instruct that tool to download an image instead. And then I use a tool called Rufus, which I'm sure you guys have talked about in the past.
Yeah.
There's an option at the top, which is the method that it's going to boot. You want to go for the bottom option, I believe, which is where it is a straight UEFI style boot. And this is specific to M.2 NVMe drives, if you're going to do an install there, right?
Why is that?
In order to boot from NVMe SSDs in your BIOS, in your UEFI BIOS, you have to disable what's called the compatibility support module. If you disable that option and you have an older style formatted Windows 10 installer USB drive, your BIOS won't see that drive when you try to boot. Like if you've turned that CSM off.
It's so funny because we had that problem as well. Russell told me, well, try it with Rufus, and it worked.
Yeah. So you have to turn off.
Okay.
You have to turn off CSM so that your system will be able to boot from the M.2 drive once the installer is like halfway through, right?
Windows. Is there anything it can't screw up?
Well, this is actually a legacy problem with BIOS. It's a BIOS specific problem. CSM exists so that your system can boot from the older stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So at the office, actually at PC Perspective, we keep 2 USB installers. Just for this case, it's the same ISO. It's just written the old way, the MBR style way, and the UEFI way.
Well, they told me that we'd be able to get this entire segment into a second segment. I didn't believe them, and I was right. There is so much more to talk about. Will you come back again someday, and we'll talk more about SSDs? Allyn Malventano is the king. He knows all, tells all. You can read more at PCPerd.com, Allyn's reviews. Lots of great information, and, of course, watch him every week on This Week in Computer Hardware with Ryan Shrout, also of PC Perspective, and my buddy Patrick Norton from TechThing. Thank you so much, Allyn.
Thanks for having me on.
I do think we'll have to do another one. I have since learned a little bit more about UEFI and CSM and ESP, and it's actually not as complicated as it sounds. The main thing is most modern computers use UEFI. Don't mix your modes. If you wanted to boot some BIOS booting media, you would use CSM, the compatibility module, but in general, you want to turn off CSM. Do everything UEFI. I think that's, by the way, one reason we're having trouble with the Neverware install. It is a UEFI install. We tried it on a really old Mac that doesn't support UEFI. It didn't even see the key.
Right.
So that's not surprising. Still weren't able to get it to run on the 2012 Mac. This is a 2010 iMac that's lying around. And I don't know if it's just slow to boot. Every once in a while it accesses it, but we're having the same issue, which is we're not getting to the next step, which is this cloud-ready installer screen. So I tell you what, this may be one of those installs that we have to take you to next week. I will keep trying Macs until I get Chrome OS running on them, but we'll show you next week, and we'll figure out what the problem is and why it's not working. I wanted to quickly just talk a little bit about this. This is my newest computer, which looks a little bit like a computer from 2005. It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while since I have used a laptop that weighed around 8 pounds, had a 17-inch screen, and look at the ports. It has 2 mini display ports, an HDMI, full-size HDMI port. It's got USB here and in the back and then 2 on the side. It's even got, oh my gosh, I haven't seen one of these in years, an Ethernet port, plus separate microphone, headphone jacks, and optical out. This thing is a beast. And here's what's really unusual about it. This is the Oryx Pro, O-R-Y-X Pro, from a company called System76. System76 sells hardware not with Windows on it, not with Mac OS on it, but with Linux on it, with Ubuntu to be specific. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to buy an Ubuntu computer from a Linux integrator and see how the state of the art has progressed. It's interesting because when you first boot this up, you get the same kind of OEM experience that you would get if you were running a Windows or a Mac machine. It welcomes you. It says set up an account. Log into your Wi-Fi. This thing, it's funny, as old as the outside looks, is actually some pretty new stuff on the inside. This is a Skylake 6th generation i7 processor, very fast processor. I did put 32 gigs of a DDR3 RAM in it, so it's got a lot of memory. It also has a NVIDIA video card, GPU, the 980M. It's a mobile 980, but that's a high end. You could, if I had Windows on here, I could probably run the Oculus Rift on this thing. It's pretty heavy duty. And the drive is SSD, but not just any SSD, that M.2 SSD that Allyn Malventano was talking about using NVMe. That's the fastest PCIe bus, fastest SSD you can get. So this is a beast of a machine. Somebody asked me when I told them I was going to buy this, and by the way, as equipped, $3,000.
Well, it's a desktop in the shape of a laptop.
It's a desktop in the shape of a laptop. And somebody said, why would you put all that heavy-duty stuff in Linux? Isn't Linux really for old systems? You put it on old machines to kind of keep them running. That's one way people use Linux. But really, scientists, programmers, a lot of people use Linux and want high-end machines. For instance, I could run virtual machines on this with all that RAM. I could have a lot more going on. It's a really fast machine with a lot of capability. I'm not going to carry this around. It only has 2 hours of battery life. And by the way, if you did carry it around, you'd have to carry around the power brick, which gives the meaning power brick a whole new meaning. It is a brick.
That's why they call them bricks, Leo. Back in the day, they were all that size.
It is heavy. This is about the size of the Xbox One power brick. It really is huge. So this is not portable, except in the kind of most extreme sense. I guess you could put it in a briefcase and carry it home if you didn't mind get your arm getting a little bit longer.
You need a big briefcase.
What I bought it for is my day-to-day show computer on the table. And what I wanted was a big screen. It's 17 inches. It's only 1080p, but that's fine. I want the text to be big. I want it to be legible. It's an IPS LCD screen, so it looks good. And it runs Linux beautifully, although if you join me, I'm running the GNOME Operate desktop on here, GNOME 3, and if you join me for the unboxing on Wednesday, you might be surprised to hear me singing this computer's praises because it wasn't working so very well when I took it out of the box. I did the OEM sign up, and then I did something that I think is user error, but Linux allows you a lot of scope for user error. I installed the GNOME desktop because I don't like Unity, and it asked me, and this is a very Linuxy thing to do, it asked me, well, all right, you now have two login managers. You have LightDM and you have GDM3. Which would you like to use? Without any hint that there was a bad choice, and I chose the bad one. I chose GDM3. I eventually thrashed the system, wasn't able to boot into it. And then, and this was a real frustration, the nice thing about Linux, if you thrash a system, you make a USB key, you reboot, you wipe it, you start over again. It's probably the fastest install of any of the big three operating systems, much faster than Windows and OS X. It just takes a couple of minutes and you start over. I set it up, as many Linux users do, so that I have all of my configuration files on GitHub. So it's a very easy thing for me to clone them and restore the machine back to its original state. So this would have been a simple thing, except for a massive bug in Ubuntu 16.04, the shipping version of Ubuntu, which, thank you, System76, their graybeards, who aren't so old, but they are definitely graybeards, said, oh, I know what's happening. There's a kind of obscure bug in Linux, or actually one of the tools that's often used on Linux installs, and certainly used by Ubuntu, that it causes a bad interaction between a Skylake processor and the NVIDIA 980M. Now, that's an unusual combination for most Linux machines. I had never run into it because I'm using older machines. He said, oh, this has been fixed in the latest version of Ubuntu. Just download the daily build 16.04.1, and it should all be fixed. And he was right. It did, and it installed, and GNOME's working great. The company I got it from, System76, gave me great support. I was very pleased to see this. They were on the internet with me. I actually never talked to them. They make desktops, they make workstations, they make servers, and these are priced kind of high end. I mean, it's like I'm buying a Macintosh, but it is real. Look at that. I mean, this is really great hardware. And I love it that they have their own Linux drivers. They have what's called a PPA, a private repository of drivers specifically for the hardware they sell. You add that, and it's automatically kept up to date on your Linux box. It's the reason I'm going to stick with Ubuntu, even though I'm not a huge Ubuntu fan. So, pros and cons. I mean, the con, I guess, would be the price. It is not inexpensive, and many people run Linux in older machines they've decided to kind of refurbish. But for me, a real pro was having all of this hardware, fast processors, lots of RAM, fast SSD, an Ethernet port running at I think it's a gigabit Ethernet port, and having multiple HDMI and mini display ports. I could run probably 3 or 4 monitors off of this easily. Really was a selling point. It's got nice Onkyo stereo speakers. This is obviously some Chinese OEM makes the hardware here. It even has a fingerprint reader, which of course doesn't work because there's no software for it to work with. But I don't care. A very nice trackpad. It works 100% out of the box. Every key, all the function keys, everything work. And I really like this. It's because it's a 17-incher.
Yeah,
this
you have
is
a number pad.
A big keyboard. I have a numeric
full 10
keypad.
key there, yeah.
I even have, and I love this too, not only all the function keys, but of course the function keys are mapped to other functions. But the default is that the function key does what a function key should do. And then if I press the FN, I can get the volume up or down. And all of this, oops, I just turned off the screen. All of this works, which is nice, out of the box with the Ubuntu as shipped. So there's a lot to be said for this. I put GNOME on here instead of Unity. I prefer the GNOME desktop. They say that all the official Ubuntu releases will work just fine on this, including Xubuntu and Lubuntu and all of those. I'm going to say really great. Great support from System76. So definitely a thumbs up if you're looking for a Linux box of any kind. You want to, I think scientists, programmers tend to like Linux a lot, where it's not going to be as good as we talked about. If you use Lightroom, you want to edit photos, if you want to edit video, some of the open source software probably isn't quite up to the same quality level as the closed source stuff from Adobe and other
But it's got Chromium on there, right? So
and this is, desktop Linux, I think, is a different, once you have Chromium on here, it comes with Firefox, and most, open free people, I guess, prefer Firefox to Google's offering. But I use Google Chrome, and this is a full Chrome. It's not Chrome itself, it's Chromium, the open source Chrome project that Chrome is based on. But everything, it syncs with my Google, all of my Google stuff. The Google accounts are on here. If you just use this, it would be as functional as a Chromebook or a Mac or a Windows machine. If the Chrome works exactly the same, including LastPass and my authenticators and all my plugins.
That gets you a long way. Just
it is.
that.
Nowadays, that's all, in many ways, that's all you need. So I'm very happy. And then, of course, I can do things like pull down a command line and start really geeking out. I love this. This is a GNOME extension that gives you with the tilde key, just like on Quake. Remember the Quake console where you could start entering go into God mode stuff? I have the command line there. I also, of course, have a full screen terminal for my IRSSI chat room experience. Nothing quite like it. There you go, my friends. Definitely, if you're looking for Linux, there are other companies that make Linux boxes. Dell even said, in fact, that's what I've used for the last few years, is Dell's version. The XPS 13 Ubuntu version, it's great, runs all versions of Linux, runs Debian beautifully. There are other companies like Reason that also sell Linux dedicated hardware, but I've been very happy with this. Colorado-based System76. And no, I didn't get a discount. Mailbag coming up. I did buy 2 power adapters because I'm not carrying that thing back and forth. Mailbag.
That's where you draw the line, huh?
Just draw the line. More Mac questions in the mailbag, but and by the way, a visit from a celebrity.
Yeah, I know.
I'm very excited. Well, kind of. But first, a geek celebrity, Robert Ballecer with Ubec, another way to power your portable Raspberry Pi or Arduino project. Robert?
Hey, screensavers. I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit with know-how on the Twit TV network. The Raspberry Pi and the Arduino have changed the face of the maker community. No longer does it take weeks or months to go from idea to design to prototype. You can now do that in minutes or hours. But the question still remains, what happens after you've created your project? What happens when you've got a game machine that you want to make portable, or you've got a set of steampunk goggles powered by Arduino that you want to make really, really portable? Well, you could go the old-fashioned route. You could get yourself a battery pack, something like this, which gives you 5-volt USB power, which both the Arduino, the various flavors, and the Raspberry Pi can accept to turn into portable power. But it's a little unwieldy, it's not really elegant, and honestly, I don't like carrying around a bulky power pack when I'm with my mobile devices. You could also get something a bit more professional by buying something that was custom designed for both an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi. That's going to cost you between $10 and $100 depending on how advanced you want it to be and how much capacity you need. But if you've got just a little bit of soldering skill and some electrical know-how, there's a much less expensive and a much better way to do it, with a power regulator. Now, this is something that I picked up from Ready to Fly Quads. It's about 99 cents, and this will allow me to take any voltage source between 7.4 and 25 volts and turn it into, well, any other voltage I want. In this particular case, 5 volts for my Raspberry Pi or my Arduino. This can give me about 5 watts of power, bursting up to about 7, so it can't drive a whole lot, but it will do very well for basic installations where you need something incredibly small. Now, if you've got a bit more space, or if you've got a project that needs a little more oomph, let's say you're driving a couple of stepper motors, you're going to want something like this. This is a Hobbywing UBEC, Universal Battery Eliminator Circuit. Quite simply, it takes power in on this side, and it puts out regulated power on that side. This will take any voltage source between 5 volts and 30 volts and turn it down into 5 or 6 volts. Of course, if you want 6, you're going to need a bit more on the input. The way it does this is by turning on the circuit on and off a lot of times really, really quickly, and then using a capacitor and a coil to smooth out that power so that it doesn't blow up your device. I've used both of these regulators in many of my Arduino and Raspberry Pi projects, and I keep a lot of them on hand. Now, again, if you can solder, just remember that there are pins on both the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi that can take this kind of power and go all mobile for forever. One of the other things I really like about this UBEC is that it can take such a big voltage range, which means I can run this off of a 12-volt adapter, off of a 7-volt adapter. I can run this off of the power supply that's connected to my laptop or another battery. No matter what, it's always going to give me clean, smooth power. If you've got a project, Raspberry Pi or Arduino, that you want to take on the road, a regulator is in your future. If you want to see how to use these, how I put them into my projects, then make sure to check out Know How every Thursday and Monday on the Twit TV network. I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, and back to the screensavers.
Thank you, Roberto Ballecer. He is such a maker. Do you do any making?
Not so much.
Yeah.
Not so much.
I'm
a little
more
bit
into
here
software
and there.
than hardware.
I do a lot of macros and command line and shell scripts, and I've got things that, like, you know, even on a Mac, like I right-click in the Finder on a file and it kicks off a shell script that runs some Unix command line thing, and that's my tinkering is all in there.
The biggest problem in life in general, but certainly even technology by itself, is there's so much and so little time.
It's true.
You could spend, I've been teaching myself Emacs. You could spend the rest of your life learning and configuring Emacs. Many people do. I think that's what happened to Richard Stallman. And that's it. And that's just one program, and you have thousands of them and thousands of customizations you can do. It's just kind of an endless thing, but it's fun. You never get bored.
Yeah, tinkering. I mean, that's one of the great things about computers. It always has been.
It's about tinkering.
Sometimes it might be, you know, my dad was a tinkerer with hardware before there were computers. He was born in the 30s. And this is, you know, growing up loving computers, that was my version of the same thing. So my dad would have a soldering iron and would tinker around with all sorts of crazy bits of hardware, and like literally hardware.
So
and for
he was
me,
like
software.
electronics tinkerer?
Yeah, exactly right. Electronics and tools. We lived on a farm, basically. So he would be rigging up with, you would not believe the stuff that my father could rig up back in the day with wire hangers. Unbelievable. For me, I stick to software. I don't want to solder anything.
So did your mother say, no more wire hangers?
My mother said no a lot to his crazy ideas. But yeah, I think that's one of the great things about life and technology, is being able to tinker around and learn stuff and modify things to be what you want them to be.
I don't want to be sexist. That does seem to be a classically male thing to do, is to putter. I'm a big putterer. Maybe it's just, we putter in the garage. That's where our puttering happens.
Could be.
Maybe not.
Maybe society wants you to be in the garage.
Hey, it's time for the mailbag. Go ahead, give me the mailbag. But before, just an update on the MacBook with Chrome. We never did. I tried it on 3 different MacBooks. Never did boot up. Not sure what the issue is. We're going to follow up, and next week we'll have a follow-up for you. But I guess the lesson is it's not as trivial and easy. But here's the good news: $150, you can buy yourself a Chromebook.
That's true.
That does all of that and more.
Yeah, and be sure when you go to that website to check the compatibility, because I think that's one of the issues. Is you've got to make sure it's compatible, and even then you may have some issues.
Well,
with it.
I think the 2 of the 3 were fully compatible.
Yeah, and it still didn't boot.
It didn't do it. There are some nice. Yeah, there's the list. Okay, help me, Mr. Mac expert 6 colors, Jason Snell. How do you know? It says MacBook 2,1. What the hell is that?
Yeah, well, you can if you do a Google search for that, you'll be able to find it. But the other way to do it is if you go to your Apple menu and you choose about this Mac, it will tell you what the model is.
Yeah, it says like mid 2012.
Right, but if you ask for more information, there's a button there. It will actually say what the model number is.
All right, let's do it. More information.
You got the system report? Is that it?
Yeah, there it is.
And then and does it say? I can't see that far away.
I can't see what it.
Yeah, it says MacBook Pro 1,3, right?
Oh, all right.
That's where you have to look it up.
Okay, good. That's a good tip.
It's better if people don't call them the 1,3 because nobody thinks like that and just says mid 2012. But but that's where you can see it. That's the identifier. MacBook Pro 11,3 in that case.
Apple's never wanted to have names.
This is what the simplicity of a naming scheme gets you. It means that there's always just give me the latest. It's like a car. You buy a Honda Civic and you don't say give me the 8th generation Honda Civic. You say give me this year's Honda Civic. And that's what Apple does with their products.
Where they're headed. They're not going to, I feel like, we'll find out at WWDC next week, but I feel like they're going to eliminate even things like El Capitan in Yosemite. It's just going to be Mac OS, right?
Well, I mean, not to get too philosophical, but these days when every OS update is free and they can all be downloaded over the internet,
the latest Mac OS.
Do you need those kind of milestones at all?
No, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
it's the latest Mac Pro, the latest iPhone.
Yeah,
I suspect we'll see the same thing with iPhones.
Eventually.
All right, mailbag is here. That means questions appear. Always open this with trepidation because you never know what's.
Also, it's a mailbox, not a mailbag, which has always confused me.
I asked for a mailbag. They gave me a mailbox. No, I told them, actually, you know what? This is mine. We have one of those. We have a mailbox at home, but we have one of those highly designed ironwork.
Sure.
It has an integral post and mailbox, and the mailbox is funky. I thought I'll replace it. So I went out and got a standard mailbox, but it doesn't integrate with the post. So I brought it here and I said, do something interesting. And they did. Don't understand this at all, but
screensavery.
That's to keep you from getting too close. I think they want to be on this was going to be on BattleBots, and then it was rejected. Moving from Windows 10 to Mac.
All right, see? Not everybody's going to Linux, Leo.
You know why I got into Linux? No, it has nothing to do with the Mac. I still love the Mac. But I was so pissed off about what Microsoft did with Windows 10 and forcing it down people's throats. I said, that's it. That's it.
Okay.
That's it. I have an LG USB Blu-ray burner. Of course, I still have plenty of Windows devices. This is a reason to go with Windows, though. Blu-ray. What is it Steve Jobs said?
Bag of hurt.
It's a bag of hurt. However, the Blu-ray software that comes with it is for Windows.
Of course.
I know many hotels tend to block things like Hulu, making my iOS app useless. So I rely on my USB hard drives, iTunes downloads, Blu-ray, and DVD discs. What do you recommend? Boy, this is for you, Jason, because I don't know. What do you recommend for making and playing Blu-rays on the Mac? Is there even software for the Mac?
There's some. A lot of it's shady. I'd say if you want to burn Blu-rays, Toast, actually.
Roxio Toast?
Roxio Toast, still out there. It will burn Blu-rays. It will do it. I wouldn't recommend that anybody watch Blu-rays on a Mac. Instead, what you probably should do is rip them. And there's great software to do that. There's software called Make MKV, which will pull, and I use that. It pulls the video data off of the Blu-ray into a Matroska video file. Still a very large file, but you can take that file and put it in Handbrake and convert it to a lower resolution file, or you can use Don Melton's Ruby scripts to do it.
These are all free.
And it's all, MKV you have to pay for, but it's worth it for me. I definitely bought it and use it all the time to get my Blu-rays into a format where they'll play on Plex, they'll play just on my Mac in QuickTime, and if you don't want to transcode it, the MKV will play if you download VLC or MPlayer and run those on the Mac.
Right.
So that's what I'd recommend, is take your movies with you as files on either your Mac's hard drive or an external drive, rather than doing the Blu-ray disc thing.
A lot easier than carrying
leave the discs at
around
home.
the player and the discs and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. But you can't, so that's interesting. I just really assumed, because of copy protection issues, that first of all, you probably couldn't play Blu-ray movies on a Macintosh, but I guess...
I think you can, but it's not necessarily from any... there's software out there. Like I said, I find a lot of it kind of shady, where there's like 50 different versions of the same software from companies you've never heard of.
Apple just never wanted to get into this copy protection problem with Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And Microsoft, they have to. It's kind of their bread and butter, is working with everything. So Microsoft has the DRM built into it. They have all the codecs. They make sure it's HDCP compliant in the hardware and the software. Apple just doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, Apple decided not to bother supporting it and just push people to iTunes instead, which I get
Can't
that.
blame them.
But I still buy Blu-rays, and one of the first things I do is make MKV and Handbrake. And
How
get
big
them
is
on
the
my-
MKV file?
The MKV file can be huge, can be like 20 gigs.
Whoa!
But then you compress it down to a
But you're
nice
losing
3.
quality when you re-encode it.
You do lose some quality, but Don Melton scripts will give you like a 5 gig, 6 gig movie that looks as good as the MKV.
Really?
And then if you want to use the Handbrake lower settings, you can get it down to like 3 gigs for a movie, 3-4 gigs.
When I just saw a 5 terabyte external drive for $140.
See?
When they're that cheap.
Just make that your movie drive.
Yeah. That's even easier.
And take it with you, and then when you're in the hotel room, you're set. And if you want to load those files on your iPad or something like that, that'll work too. Not the MKVs, but the transcoded MP4s.
It's one of the nice things about Handbrake is you can say what the target device is.
In fact, make MKV. There's a couple little command line things you have to do that you can look up on Google. Dave Hamilton at the Mac Observer wrote a nice story about it. And it integrates with Handbrake. So then you can put in your Blu-ray disc and just open Handbrake and make MKV. Basically, its transcoder works in the background. And then it's even easier to do it. So it's very easy to convert Blu-ray videos into just files you can play on a Mac or an iPad or Plex on any system anywhere.
I got a mailbag question. I think you might enjoy this because I think you know this guy. Mitchell Waite.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who's been around for any length of time with computers knows the Waite Group. One of the great computer book publishers. Mitchell Waite's been around for a long time. Got into computers in the very earliest years. He was a member of the Homebrew Computer Club, and met Steve there and bought one of the very first. Remember they made the boards for the Byte Shop?
Right.
Mitchell Waite, welcome. He has. Do you still have your Apple I board lying around?
Yeah, it's right over there.
No, really?
Yeah, and I got it working.
What?
Which
That's
was
awesome.
not easy.
So it's
40 years old.
Yeah. You recently got it working.
I recently got it working. And trying to buy 40-year-old memory chips is not an easy thing to do.
That's the days when you would actually put them in yourself. They had little legs and you'd put them in the little holes and tap them in. I remember that very well. What are you going to do with it, Mitch?
I'm probably going to put it in an auction. The last one went for sale for $800,000.
Yeah, I would.
I don't know what else to do with it. It's going to disintegrate if I don't do something with it.
Yeah.
No, that's a good thing to do. I think that's a very good thing to do. So Mitch is going to join us on Monday. We're going to do a great triangulation. He's a birder, and he does a program that every birder probably already knows and uses iBird. It's kind of legendary. And so we'll talk about that and birding. And boy, I tell you, the iBird is made for the iPad, or should I say the iPad's made for iBird, to see all those beautiful images and all of that.
Yeah, we've got it in our house. My wife uses it all the time.
But he sent us a question, and I thought, well, let's get him on the show a little ahead of time. So what can we do for you, Mitch?
So my question is about the Amazon Echo. And basically, I discovered recently that they sold one for the outdoors called the Tap. And I thought, okay, great, I'll use it in my car. and I got it in my car, and I got my iPhone out, and I tried to use it, and I discovered it wouldn't work. So my question for you was basically, how do you use a tap when you're outside and you have one cell phone with you?
That's a good question. I actually use a dot, and I know people have used the dot. So this is the original Echo, the kind of weird cylinder. And there have been a lot of variants on this, including, by the way, now you can put the software on a Raspberry Pi, and you can make a Raspberry Pi Echo. And that actually might be more suitable for what you're doing in the car. But the dot, or the tap that you have, has a battery in it.
Right.
And it's basically this battery powered. And then there's the dot, which is just the top part of this. It has a little speaker in it. But I use the dot at home because I want better speakers. The big, I think one of the issues with the Echo is that the speaker's not great for music. It's fine for books. So I use the dot, and I Bluetooth it to a really nice JBL speaker, powered speaker. And that way, when I talk to the lady shall
in the
not
canister,
be named, she speaks in a very rich, full voice that fills the room, and then the music's great and everything. So the dot, I do know people are using the dot, but it's problematic because when you turn off the car, the power goes off.
That's not a big problem because it's got a very long-term battery built into it.
So the tap would be better.
Yeah, the tap is really the way to go. Would you like to know what I found out when I did it to work? Well, basically, all these products are designed to use a separate Wi-Fi channel that's different than the channel that you use to talk to it through your app. So what that means is when you're talking to it with your app's busy and can't use its own Wi-Fi to talk to the outside world.
Oh, that's
can't use its own cellular connection. Now I thought, okay, well maybe I could talk to the Alexa, let's call it Alexa or Voldemort or whatever you want to call it.
We just call it the Echo because even though our Echo responds to that as a trigger word, most Echoes are tuned to Alexa. Yeah.
Yeah, mine's tuned to Alexa.
Yeah.
And when I try to talk to it with my phone on Bluetooth, I thought, okay, well then.
Oh, so you wait a minute. So you don't want to talk to her with her microphone. You want to talk to her through your phone.
No. Let me put it differently. In order to get this tap to work at all, you've got to be synced to something.
To an internet connection.
An internet connection.
Yeah.
And so if you're in your car.
So some people were suggesting a MiFi, and I know somebody who uses a MiFi in the car.
Okay, so a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Right.
Would work, right? So basically I brought in another phone, my Samsung Edge, and I used it as a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Oh yeah, you could just leave it in the car if you don't need it. Sure.
Okay, good. But then I couldn't get the Alexa to do anything without having a separate phone, like an iPhone, to talk to it, to actually control it. In other words, it wouldn't, and I couldn't get it to work until I had something to set it up with.
Yes, you have to set it up. That's right.
Okay, so what do you do that on? You can't do it on the same phone that's connected as your Wi-Fi hotspot.
That's why if you used a MiFi, that would be more appropriate because it's just internet access, not a phone. So you have to have two phones or one phone and a MiFi. Right.
That's the bottom line, which to me seems like a real flaw.
Well, it's just I mean,
you're outdoors and you want to use this thing.
Oh, I get that's a good point. If it's not in the car, it's not as much of a problem because you leave your phone in the car or an old phone or a MiFi. But as you're traveling around, it would be more of an issue. You have to carry two devices. We couldn't turn.
Even in the car, you've got to have two phones.
Once you set it up, though, couldn't you put your phone in hotspot mode and have the Echo connect to your phone?
But then, yeah, you can take your Samsung Edge or whatever and have it in your car.
Yeah.
And have it permanently in there, and it'll always work with your Alexa, Echo, whatever. But then when you need to start the things up, you've still got to set it up. And you got to do that with another phone.
Oh, not each time, just the first time.
When you turn the car completely off, the Alexa goes off.
And that means you need a phone to configure it the next time?
Right, because we
unplug this puppy all the time.
Yeah, and it remembers my power went out this week.
Yeah, and eventually, so I'm going to unplug it, and then eventually it's going to come on and say, and then we'll know we could use it again, right? It makes a big sound.
It's the phone that's connected to the hotspot, the mobile hotspot phone.
So you're saying this is going out to find a phone? Because that's where it gets its hotspot information?
Yeah, the hotspot in the car is its Wi-Fi information. If you turn your phone off or you turn your car off, your phone's going to go into screensaver mode. Your hotspot's going to turn off. You're no longer connected to the internet.
That's how my friend Gary solved it. He had a battery pack on his phone. So in other words, the phone didn't ever go off.
There you go. That would work.
See, she's waking up. Hello. Yes, and that's the big problem everybody's experiencing with whether it's a tap or a dot. Is you really want to keep it continuously powered.
Right.
But it's not such a big deal if, as I just did, you lose power on the Echo. That's fine.
No, that's different.
That's fine. It's losing power on the access point that you can't do.
The access point,
now
exactly.
I get
if your
what you're
internet went out at Twit TV right now, you wouldn't be able to use it.
Right. But if it came back, wouldn't she say, "Oh, well, I know my access point. Let's just rejoin it"?
Right, because your access point's smart enough to start up and start sending its signal all over the place.
Right.
But a phone that's in a mobile hotspot
doesn't do that.
Doesn't do that.
It's saving power by not broadcasting its ID
and
when
it
it
won't
doesn't
broadcast
have to.
until you go back in and say broadcast. So what they should have done is built in a mobile hotspot.
I completely agree.
That would have been ideal. And maybe that's what Apple or Google will do when they do
Probably. Although I don't think Jeff Bezos is going down without a fight. He was just at the Recode conference last week and said, we have 1,000 people at Amazon working on the Echo platform.
He's got to be way ahead of everybody
I think he certainly knows what we're just saying, and this is not news to him. And I anticipate, here's what I would not be surprised, is that Echo becomes a platform. We're seeing it already with EchoSim.io, where it's and the Raspberry Pi. He's going to sell this platform to Sonos and others. It's good for him because, of course, you can buy from Amazon. You can't do that on the Google Home or whatever Apple ends up doing. Only Echo lets you say, hey, buy me some more batteries. And so I think this is a platform that he's probably going to extend all over the place.
And from the very first Kindle, Amazon's had experience embedding cellular data technology in their products. So I'm sure there's going to be an Echo family product
with
on the way
Yes.
that will have WhisperSync built in, and you'll pay a fee or everything will cost a little bit more, but there'll be something, and then it will be able to roam anywhere.
Conspiracy theory. Do you think that's why he bought Audible? Is for the Echo?
Do you think they'll take this a little further and elongate or expand on their SDK so it can do things like, I heard you mention this morning that why can't we have Twit as one of the channels in my news when I'm using the Echo?
That's right.
That SDK is pretty limited right now with what you can do.
For now, you have to. So there's a morning briefing that the Echo will do, and it has a number of news sources which has been growing, and I'd love to be one of those news sources. But wouldn't it be nice that you could have any arbitrary news source? I mean, if it's an audio news source, why can't I just put that in here? I'm sure
could I even develop apps for this Echo? I mean, could it have its own store?
Oh, that's interesting. You know, I don't know if you've played with it at all, but the Echo SDK is actually pretty fun to play with. And it uses Amazon's, I want to say, Lumberyard, but is that it? It's something like that. It has it's an Amazon service, a web service, and it's pretty easy to write your own code and and create an Echo skill. And if you're not selling it, I know people are writing skills for their home. So it's very extensible. The Amazon Alexa Skills Kit Ask.
We were thinking, could we actually build iBird that would work with Alexa so you could put it out in your yard and see if it would identify some of the birds that were out there?
Yeah, because iBird will identify a bird song, right? You
Not quite. That's what I'm going to talk about on Monday. That's like a whole that's a neural net that's coming.
Oh, that's exciting. That's, to me, this is the bottom line on all of this. And I'm going to steal this from our triangulation of a couple of weeks ago. Oh, who was I talking to?
Bill Atkinson.
And then, isn't he great, by the way?
That was the best show ever.
Wow. He is a sweetheart.
What a great guy.
Wow.
I'm so glad you did that second part. That just was amazing.
Yeah.
I had sent so many people to listen to the part one.
Well, he was very generous. He came here and gave us 3 hours and brought toys and show and tell. You saw the license plates. Oh,
He's
my
so
goodness.
articulate. It's just he makes things really simple that are very complicated.
Yeah, I agree. So, no, we were talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence, and I've forgotten who I was talking with about. But he said, and I think this is true, that the future, when electricity became widespread and commonplace, the electrification of America, it opened a huge branch of innovation. Oh, it was, of course, now I know, it's Kevin Kelly. His new book is about the next 20 years of innovation. He said when electricity came into America, farmers would look at their pump and go, you know, if I just add a little electricity to that, that would really be a cool invention. He says the same thing is about to happen with machine learning. Look at anything in your site. Add a little machine learning to that. Now what can it do? And that's he says, this is the beginning of a huge era of innovation based on that.
Wow.
Mitch, we're going to talk to you on Monday. I'm so excited. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Can't wait. Mitchell Waite, the Mitchell Waite Group. iBird is, if you're a birder, I don't even have to tell you, it's the app.
If you've ever wondered what that bird is in your backyard, iBird is the way to go.
Thank you, Mitch. We'll talk next week, or next Monday. Yeah.
See you Monday.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's see, the new T-shirt, just a couple more days if you want to buy our Twit World Tour T-shirt, about a week left. Go to Teespring, TEEspring.com/twit. $20. We call it the World Tour T because on the back it's got all the Twit shows, kind of looks like our tour dates. And on the front, we finally came out. We're out of the closet. We are IPTV.
Nice.
Yeah. I didn't want to admit it for so long. I was afraid of what my mother would think. She said, you know, you've been in TV and radio for so long, now you're in IPTV? What did I do wrong? But I'm sorry, we are. Get it, teespring.com/twit. We also have a newsletter, twit.tv/newsletter. That's free, and that lets you know what's coming up. And if you don't want to miss things like Mitch Waite and the Apple one, subscribe to the newsletter every Sunday night, early Monday morning. You'll get that, and it'll tell you what's ahead for the rest of the week. No salesman will call. We do not use your email address for anything else. I promise you. That's it. Always fun with you.
Can you believe it? Yeah, it's great.
For coming.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy
Anything
to
you
drop
want to plug? The Incomparable is far out.
Visit theincomparable.com for many fun podcasts about geeky pop culture stuff, and sixcolors.com for all of my writing about Apple and related technologies.
Yep.
And go to Relay FM, and my tech podcasts are there. Not quite as big an outfit as Twit, but a little
they're
scrappy,
great,
young and scrappy and hungry.
Look at all of them there.
Like our country, right? I got to drop
scrappy and hungry.
Got to drop a Hamilton reference.
Can't do the show without one Hamilton reference.
No, can't.
He's leaving July
nonstop.
9th. Did you see this? He's leaving the play July 9th. Tickets for his last night are selling as high as $10,000 on the scalper sites. $10,000. But the weird thing is what he's leaving to do.
The Mary Poppins sequel. It's true.
What?
I know. He's a Disney guy from way back.
Emily Blunt and... What is he going to play the Dick Van Dyke role?
I don't even know. Who knows what the sequel will be?
Hello, Mary. Except instead of hello, Mary, be hello, Mary. What you doing?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the whole thing. The
Maybe
Puerto
so.
Rican chimney sweep.
Can you imagine what's going to happen? A couple years, he's going to go back and do like 6 months of Hamilton, and everybody's going to lose their minds.
Best thing I ever saw. You still have some time. You should run back.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to do it, but I'm signed up for San Francisco, so I'll see it next year.
Yeah, me too. All right, we got the Hamilton talk. Enough of that. Are you doing Pod for Ham?
Yeah, we're going to be
You're
moving
not done yet?
We're not done. We're finishing Act 1, so I'll get you signed up for some time in Act 2.
There's 46 tracks. They're doing it one by one. That's almost a year.
Once a week. That's right, for 2016. We're almost to the act break. What happens then? I'm not sure.
Well,
we're up to Lafayette now. So,
that's one of my favorites. Oh my gosh, he's so good.
Yeah.
David Diggs.
Oh yeah, they lose their minds over David Diggs in that episode.
Oh
anyway,
yeah. You know what?
Good.
When he comes out on stage, the crowd goes wild.
Yeah, they've had to build pauses into that show.
Oh yeah.
Because of all the applause. Man, welcome to Hamilton Savers.
Hamilton Savers. Hey, there's an idea. Thank you for joining us. I hope you come back every Saturday about 3 Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 2200 UTC. You can always watch live, be in the chat room. We would love it if you do. But if you don't want to watch live, it's IPTV. That means there's on-demand audio and video of all of our shows available at our website, in this case, twit.tv/NSS. You can also subscribe on any podcatcher of your choice, including, of course, iTunes. But there are Twit apps on every platform as well, including Roku and Apple TV. And getting it on those platforms every week means you'll always have something to watch. That's nice. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the new Screensavers. Bye-bye, everybody.